body's trying to get rid of it. So upper respiratory tract infections like sinusitis, ear infections, tonsillitis, all linked to the body trying to clear toxic bodies out of the cardiovascular system. But then also skin conditions. Our skin is our largest organ. It's a porous membrane, and the body can push toxins out. So if we're getting skin conditions, if we're getting acne, all linked to the health of the intestine. So hugely powerful the microbiome is, hugely important, and we need to really understand how we can support it. And what I'm going to help you do over the next 30 minutes or so is really understanding how you can support it. So let's just start with the basics of the gastrointestinal tract. What happens when we eat? So when we eat, we have saliva in our mouth, which we should chew our food 12 times. And the saliva in our mouth should start to break down carbohydrates. And those carbohydrates are coated in saliva, and as it passes down the esophagus into the stomach, that carbohydrate breakdown has started, and in the stomach should have the right balance of pH for the hydrochloric acid to start breaking down proteins in the stomach. And if we are eating food that is natural, in a natural food state, then the foods that we are consuming will release food enzymes into the stomach to help balance that pH of the hydrochloric acid. And then as that substance moves from the stomach into the pancreatic area, the right pH balance will cause the release of pancreatic enzymes. And those pancreatic enzymes will then break the food molecules down even further. So pancreatic enzymes, amylase, protease, and lipase will break the food molecules, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats down further. And when that moves on to the small intestine for digestion to take place, we can absorb the right level of nutrients to allow for the body to stay healthy. The body's a very sophisticated machine, and it can heal itself, but it has to have the right nutrients to be able to do that. So if we are functioning on chemicals, if we're functioning on medications, if we're not giving the body nutrients in the right balance, then the body can, the healing properties of the body can start to break down. So the whole process of eating is super important to allow for the right balance of nutrients to be absorbed, and therefore the body to be able to heal itself, and for the right balance of bacteria to be maintained in the intestine. But what happens if this process breaks down, if this process fails? So what happens if we are consuming a diet that is too high in processed foods? What happens if we are consuming too high levels of sugar? What happens if we are not consuming enough food enzymes to allow for the pH balance in the stomach to be at the right level? There are so many factors in 21st century life that can have a huge impact on the functioning and the health of our microbiome. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail now. So we very much have a diet that is created now for convenience. We are time poor, cash rich, more so than ever before. And so consequently, we are now to eat within a limited time. So we have now a diet that is created for not health. And this is a diet that is created for convenience. So it's speedy. We can create things, we can create foods very quickly. And it's been almost overcomplicated. Health has become overcomplicated. And there is this feeling that to be healthy, it's actually quite difficult. And it's not difficult at all. But the food industry has led us to believe that because we are time poor and cash rich, actually what we need to do is just buy something off the shelf that is quick to put in the oven. I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago who had for many years been using processed foods, had been using kind of pre-prepared meals and all that kind of thing. And he said, what I did is I sat down and I looked at how much it was costing me to buy those meals every week, and how much it would cost me to buy the ingredients to create those meals. And then I looked at how long was it taking for that food to cook. So when I came in from work, the process of coming in from work, taking it out of its packaging, the oven heater, in the oven, waiting for it to be ready, compared to me creating something from scratch when I came in from work. What was the comparison? He said there was no comparison. it didn't actually take any longer to have that food cooked in the oven as a pre-prepared meal as it would be for him to chop some vegetables and create a stir fry. So he realized that actually that eating for better health was just as time efficient as it is to use pre-prepared foods. So really it is the food industry that's leading us down this road of believing that we have to go for these convenience foods because we haven't got enough time. But what is in these convenience foods are lots of chemicals, lots of sugar, lots of bad fats that are give it some shelf life, give it stability on the shelf, but don't support us as far as our health is concerned, make it cheap and easy to produce for the food manufacturers so they can sell it at a profit to us. But it's actually giving us no value at all from a nutrition point of view. And if our microbiome is not being nourished, it's just like any other functioning part of the body. If we're not nourishing our microbiome, it is going to degrade over time. If you're not taking on, let's say, B vitamins, for example, that are important for energy, if you're not getting enough B vitamins, your energy levels are going to be lower. If you're not feeding your microbiome in the right way, it is going to degrade over time. You are either improving your microbiome or it is degrading, basically. And if you have a diet, or if you know people that have diets that are full of processed foods in particular, that is very detrimental to the health of the microbiome, the bacterial populations in the intestine. Plus, our food now is kept in cold storage for long periods of time. So apples that will have been picked in September last year are on our supermarket shelves now. The half-life of the nutrients in an apple is a month. So for every month it's kept in cold storage, it's depleting its nutrient content by a half, which is a huge amount. And we are force growing foods out of season. We are picking them before they are ripe. We are transporting them huge distances. The ripening process on the bush is when the most of the nutrients, the vitamins and minerals form in any kind of produce. And growing foods out of seasons mean they are full of water and they don't have the nutrient content they would have done if they had been grown in season. So even though we think we're eating a diet that is rich in nutrients, we may or not actually be getting our complete nutrient amount for each day. So a diet that's very convenient is detrimental to the health of our bacteria, to our good bacteria in our intestine. And then we have the kind of use of or overuse of medicines and antibiotics in the last kind of 50 years or so. So antibiotics in particular, they don't differentiate between harmful bacteria and good bacteria. So when we take antibiotics, we're killing off the bacteria. And there's lots of reports out there now that show that even a 7-day course of antibiotics can leave the microbiome population, the bacterial population in the intestine, compromised for up to a year. And if you're not eating the right foods to help it to flourish, then that is going to continue to degrade. That microbiome population is going to continue to degrade. We've got medicines and drugs that are, paracetamol and ibuprofen and birth control pills and HRT. All of these will cause a degradation and a disruption to the health of the bacteria in us and on us. And although we have now this kind of longevity, if you like, in terms of the utilization of medicines to keep us alive for longer, they're not actually making us healthy. They're actually degrading our health. And the core of good health comes from the health of the intestine. It comes from the health of the bacteria that live on the wall of the intestine. Medicines and antibiotics, unfortunately, do not support the health of that bacteria. And if we're using medicines long term, they're degrading that bacteria, and that is then resulting us in having to use more medication. So let's look at a situation where someone has an infection of some description, and they are taking a course of antibiotics for 7 days, and 6 to 8 months later they're feeling quite tired. They don't know what's wrong with them. They might have had another couple of illnesses after that course of antibiotics, and they can't quite put their finger on it, so they go back to the doctor. The doctor might test their thyroid function, and then maybe their thyroid is a little bit low, so they then go on thyroxine to kind of try and boost their energy levels, but that doesn't really seem to be making any difference. Sometimes somewhere down the line they might end up with slightly raised blood pressure. Their menopause might be all over the place, or hormones might be all over the place. There are so many knock-on effects that come from the health of the bacteria on the wall of the intestine that can be traced back to antibiotics. My clients that I work with on a day-to-day basis are often, I can trace their issues back to antibiotics that were used consistently, perhaps for tonsillitis or maybe acne as a teenager, maybe periods where they've had repeat prescriptions. So a good example of a client is someone had whooping cough when they were 13 and ended up on antibiotics for repeated bouts of antibiotics through the course of that winter. By the time they were 19, they were on thyroxine. By the time they were in their early 20s to mid-20s, they were being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, autoimmune condition, all linked back to the use of those antibiotics in teenage years that has resulted in longer term compromised health, basically. And I'm sure you will agree with me, there was a period of time, doctors are not so bad at doing it now, but there was a period of time where antibiotics were being handed out like sweets, basically. If you went to the doctor with a virus and they didn't know what it was, they would say, well, just take a bout of antibiotics and see if you can solve the problem. Apologies. Just get rid of that. Sorry, should have turned that phone off. Okay, so alcohol is another issue when it comes to the health of the intestine. So alcohol is full of sugar, and sugar actually is very detrimental to the bacteria in the intestine and will be very powerful in supporting the bad bacteria to grow and yeast populations. So anything high sugar, whether it's a chocolate addiction, whether it's an alcohol consumption, will feed the yeast and the bad bacteria in the intestine. Alcohol has no nutritional value whatsoever. And to be honest with you, kind of cheap chocolate doesn't really have a huge amount of nutritional value to the body either. But it can be very detrimental to the system, very detrimental to the microbiome. And even just one glass of wine can tip the balance of the bacteria in our intestine to the wrong angle. So what it means is that it takes a while then after one glass of wine for the bacterial populations to repair. So if we're using a glass of wine every evening, we're coming from work to kind of de-stress, actually what we're doing is causing more and more harm to the microbiome populations, which, as I said at the beginning, if you're not improving your microbiome, you are destroying it. It will start to destroy it long term, and gradually it will begin to fall off a cliff, and that will have a huge impact on other areas of your life. Your ability to cope with stress, for example, your ability to sleep well at night, all resulting from the use of the consumption of alcohol to relax after a busy day's work at work, and a disruption to the health of the microbiome, to the health of the good bacteria in the intestine. So understanding what alcohol can do, and that's not to say you can't ever drink alcohol again, but it's just understanding that actually if you want to help your body to repair and you want your system to repair, maybe periods of alcohol-free periods with some of my clients who are using alcohol every evening to relax after work. And, I move them towards 5 consecutive free days without alcohol. It might be something that if you are that person that's thinking, I am drinking a glass of wine every evening, I'm sure it's not doing any good to the health of my intestine, maybe just thinking about 5 days consecutively to allow for the intestinal wall to repair itself and the microbiome populations to replenish. If your diet is good and you're consuming alcohol every evening, so because there's this whole dichotomy of a kind of Mediterranean diet where they're consuming red wine, for example, and they're consuming that with most meals, but in general their diet is pretty fresh and very fibrous. So that diet will feed the good bacterial populations and will kind of counterbalance the disruption that a glass of alcohol could do to the health of the intestine. So it's just kind of trying to demonstrate that there are different angles to take on this, really. Environmental toxicity is another thing that can cause a disruption to the microbiome. So skincare products in particular, because you have a microbiome population on your skin, if you are using chemically laden skincare products and putting it on your skin, that will be destroying the health of the microbiome on your skin. Household cleaners, breathing them in can destroy the microbiome in the nose, what's the word I'm looking for? Are breathing in passageways. I'll find another word for it in a minute. But tap water, full of HRT, birth control pill not being filtered out of our water, pesticides on our food, so food that we're eating that's been sprayed with pesticides to get rid of bugs, for example, that's a toxin that we take on board. And all of these are basically endotoxins that kind of go into the intestine and disrupt the health of the microbiome, and can basically, that filter that I talked about at the beginning on the wall of the intestine can cause the breakdown of that barrier, of that filter of good bacteria on the wall intestine, to mean that things can pass across without them being controlled, without them being prevented from passing across. So environmental toxicity is huge, actually, in terms of the impact that it has on our bacterial populations. And then stress is massive. From a bacterial population point of view, cortisol, which is a hormone that's released in relation to stress, is hugely, hugely toxic to the health of the bacteria on the wall of the intestine. And so if we are struggling with stress, the flight or fight response, that is our stress response, results in the shutdown of our intestinal system anyway, because it is a kind of peripheral system that is not needed if we are going to go and catch a buffalo or what have you. So when we developed the flight or fight response, it was in relation to catching a buffalo, for example. So we would have to run and catch the buffalo and bring it back to eat. Now, when we're stressed, we are sitting in traffic, we're on the phone, we're screaming at our children to try and get them to get their shoes on, and so consequently, we're not using the hormones that we release in relation to stress in the right way, and that is significant as far as the gut is concerned. Those hormones that are released will cause the shutdown of the intestinal system, so that we can run and catch that buffalo, but we're not running to catch the buffalo. So IBS, stress-linked IBS, is because the intestinal system is shutting down. But more importantly, because we release a hormone called cortisol, and cortisol is detrimental to the health of the gut bacteria, the cortisol starts the degradation of the gut bacteria, which exacerbates the IBS even further. So not only then do we have this sort of two-pronged attack, we have cortisol rising in the system, which will cause the degradation of the bacteria, but then we also have a lesser ability to be able to cope with stress if our bacterial populations are lower than we should be. That gut-brain connection that I talked about is being compromised, and so from a mental perspective, it's harder to cope with stress, and so we have higher levels of cortisol that result in further degradation to the gut microbiome. So stress, actually, not only is it shutting down the digestive tract in order to respond to stress, it's actually also destroying the health of the gut bacteria, making us less able to cope with stress. So some of the side effects of healing the gut bacteria and solving the imbalance in our gut bacteria can be that it's much easier to cope with stress on a day-to-day basis. It's not just external stress, it's internal stress as well. So hormone imbalances like menopause can be a huge stress on the system. The kind of blood sugar imbalances, where we're eating the wrong foods and having peaks and troughs in blood sugar during the course of the day. Autoimmune conditions are a stress on the system. And then medical operations and things like that can also be a huge stress on the system. So all of these things can be very detrimental to the health of the bacteria on the wall of the intestine. And then lastly, we are becoming less and less, we're moving less and less, becoming more and more sedentary. And there's lots of research out there to show now that movement of any type will feed the good bacteria, and it will keep foods moving through the intestine effectively. It's exercise. It helps to keep muscle tone of the intestinal wall to allow for foods to move through. And if foods are sitting in the intestine for a long period of time, so if you're sitting all day, that causes the slowing down of the waste that's moving through the intestine. It becomes very sluggish. The kind of muscle tone of the gut wall becomes compromised, and therefore the food starts to ferment a little bit in the intestine, and that can have a knock-on effect to the health of the bacteria on the wall of the intestine as well. So just moving more and drinking more water to allow for the waste to move through the intestine can go a long, long way to helping to support a healthy microbiome. So this 2,500-year-old saying, if you fix the gut, you fix the problem. I just want to take you through this journey to understand how the intestine is then affecting our kind of metabolic dysfunction on a day-to-day basis. So if we have a compromised gut wall, toxins are able to pass across the gut wall. So whether that's toxins from processed food, whether that's toxins from environmental toxicity, the endotoxins that we might take on board, the pesticides from the food that we're eating, for example, whether that's a toxin from the medication that we are taking. All of these things are causing the degradation of the wall of the intestine, of the bacterial population on the wall of the intestine that acts as a filter. And so those toxins are passing, or are able to pass more freely across the gut wall. So they're starting to make holes in the gut wall. And those holes that form in the gut wall are kind of a breakdown in the barrier of our defenses. Our immune system starts in our intestine, basically. It's the first line of defense for anything that shouldn't be passing into our internal system, to our cardiovascular system. So these toxins can more freely get across the gut wall without that barrier of the microbiome. And when they pass across the gut wall, the immune system goes into a response, an immune response. So as if you cut your finger, imagine if you cut your finger and a little bit of inflammation forms around that cut, because it's the body's immunities, the immune system's way of preventing anything from passing across that breakdown in our kind of body's defenses. So we create this inflammation to prevent anything more from passing across, which is fine. It's a little bit of inflammation is important, it's healthy. But if we have toxins passing across the gut wall consistently, and the body is setting up inflammation around the gut wall to try and prevent these things passing across, but they just keep on passing across, we have more and more inflammation being set up around the gut wall. So that's what we call systemic inflammation. It's deep down inflammation. That can cause inflammation in our joints. It can cause an inflammatory response in the brain. So they're now sort of talking about looking at how Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are all linked to toxins, endotoxins passing across the gut wall and the body creating inflammation, and how it's causing an issue in relation to our kind of mental health as well. So this inflammation, systemic inflammation that's deep down in the system, is the immune system's response to try and prevent toxins from passing across the gut wall. And when this inflammation is set up, as I said before, it's a stress on the system. So we have this flight or fight response where the body will shut down non-vital functions in order for our system to be able to function at its optimal. But if this inflammation is going on all the time, this is a constant stress to the body. And so we're constant releasing sugars from our glycogen stores into our cardiovascular system, and constant releasing insulin, which is the hormone that is released in response to sugars. And the insulin is sweeping up the sugars and taking them to the cells for energy production. But actually, because we're stressed internally, we're not stressed externally, we're not burning any extra energy, therefore the sugars aren't needed in the cells. So the cells, the receptors on the cells, start to shut down. And we start to get to what we call insulin resistant, where more and more insulin is being released into the system because more and more sugars are being released from our glycogen stores. And that sugar is being swept up in the cardiovascular system, taken to the cells for energy production, but is not needed. So it's causing a disruption in our metabolism, and that in itself is leading to a level of insulin resistance, which is kind of pre-diabetic, basically. When we are insulin resistant, we can have symptoms like tiredness because we're not getting energy to the cells. We're not getting sugar to the cells for energy production because all the insulin receptors have shut down. So we might find ourselves eating more sugary foods because we're trying to increase our energy levels. So we have bigger and bigger blood sugar swings, which is a bigger stress on the system. More stress results in cortisol production. More cortisol results in the degradation of the health of the bacteria on the wall of the intestine. More toxins can pass across the gut wall. And so this process is being repeated and repeated. And if we're finding ourselves eating more sugary foods because our energy levels are dropping, that has an impact on the body's weight gain. We might find that we are diagnosed with a thyroid imbalance. Thyroid function is the first thing to go when we have a level of toxicity in the system. because the thyroid gland is very, very sensitive and will pick up toxins in the system. So obviously thyroid function is related to metabolism function or metabolism. So if our thyroid function drops, our metabolism drops, we might find ourselves putting on a little bit of extra weight. If our insulin levels are all over the place and we're eating to kind of try and increase our energy levels, that can increase our weight as well. And when we start to gain more and more weight essentially is its own kind of ecosystem. It starts to control how hungry we feel, how full we feel. It suppresses our fullness hormone and increases our appetite hormone, ghrelin. And we then start to find ourselves eating more. And so this cycle of insulin resistance goes on, blood sugar imbalances goes on, we put on more weight, and we head into metabolic dysfunction where we might see cardiovascular problems developing, like higher blood pressure, might see kind of some cholesterol levels rising, all sorts of issues that can then come as a result of metabolic dysfunction. But if you unpick all of that and go back to the health of the microbiome, the microbiota that are living on the wall of the intestine, if that intestinal wall, if that microbiome population is acting as the filter that it should be acting as, toxins can't pass across. It's a bulletproof barrier where toxins can't pass across. So we won't get the inflammation. That inflammation won't be a stress on the system, so it won't result in high cortisol levels, which will be degraded, will cause the bacterial populations to degrade even further. And so consequently, our insulin resistance starts to become more and more apparent. We won't get the insulin resistance in the same way. We won't get that disruption of the metabolism. We won't put on weight. We won't have an impact on our thyroid function because we won't have high levels of toxins in the system, and therefore we won't have the metabolic dysfunction. So all disease really does begin in the intestine. If you fix the intestine, you fix the problem. It really is as simple as that. I know it seems kind of almost too good to be true, but it really is as simple as focusing on the health of your microbiome. You focus on the health of your microbiome, you heal your gut wall and your microbiome over a period of time, you could have boundless energy. You could have healthy, clear skin with strong nails. You could sleep really, really well every single night. Whenever I work with clients who are focusing on how repairing the health of their microbiome, their sleep is one of the biggest things to improve. How good would it feel to have a full and refreshing night's sleep every night? I've worked with clients who haven't slept for years, for 10 years. And once we started on working, repairing the health of the microbiome, all of a sudden, they're finding that having good quality, refreshing sleep every night. And when you have good quality sleep, it allows the body to repair itself. It allows the body to clean, the brain cleans. It allows for repair throughout the system, and consequently, your health really starts to rise. We can get rid of hormone imbalances. We can support the liver to do the jobs that it needs to do to be able to balance hormones more effectively and get rid of the symptoms of menopause. We can solve mental clarity and get rid of brain fog completely by focusing on the health of the intestine. We can get rid of that horrible discomfort of bloating and IBS on a day-to-day basis, ease joint pain. We can really help you understand how you can unlock your potential, get to better health, and live life to the fullest by repairing the health of the intestine. However, a lot of people will function with tiredness and poor sleep and just think that's how it's going to be for the rest of their life. They will accept that hormone imbalances are part of growing older. Thyroid function, PMT, menopause, all part of getting older. We've been led to believe to expect that, and therefore we will go on medication to treat it as a sticking plaster solution, not actually to solve the problem. Headaches that come from an underfunctioning liver because the liver can't clear the toxins out of the system. Inflammation that's caused around the gut wall leads to a weakened immune system, where the immune system is weak, but it's in overdrive. And so we start to get autoimmune conditions developing like fibromyalgia. Skin conditions, stubborn weight gain that we can't get rid of. We are accepting these as being something that is happening on a daily basis and we can't do anything about it. We're told we can't do anything about it, but actually we can do something about it. We can solve these problems by focusing on the health of our intestine. So if we are going to solve these problems, what do we need to do? We need to optimize our gut health. Now, I want to tell you a little story. about, I have to think about this chronologically because I can't really remember, because it was the beginning of my journey into intestinal health and understanding the benefits and value of supporting the health of the microbiome. It was about 9 years ago. I had a streptococcal knee infection. So my husband had a strep throat, and I got the same bug, but the bug for me didn't hit my throat. It hit my knee. It went to my knee. The doctors don't really know why, but I got a massively inflamed knee, very, very swollen, very, very painful, and very high temperature. And I went up to A&E because it was like a Friday afternoon, something ridiculous. You know, these things always happen at the worst time. It was a Friday afternoon. I went to A&E, and they said, we're going to have to keep you in to give you intravenous antibiotics to get on top of this bacterial infection that's happening in your knee. And I was like, well, I've got two small children at the time. I can't, there's no way. I haven't got any kind of other, it wasn't just me and my husband. There was no other support network in where we were living. And so they said, okay, we'll give you high dose antibiotics. And I had a 10-day course of antibiotics, 3 grams of antibiotics 3 times a day. It was a massively high dose. And at the end of day 10, as soon as I stopped taking antibiotics, the infection came back. So I had to go on another 15-day course. And I did get on top of it in the end after 25 days of antibiotics. But fast forward 4 or 5 years, and I've got a busy, I'm self-employed, I've got a very busy business, but I'm having to take a sleep in the afternoon because I'm exhausted all the time. I've got skin conditions, like a psoriasis on my skin, a little bit of thrush that I can never seem to get on top of. I've got fungal nail infections, and I really just, my intestine was all over the place on a day-to-day basis. And I went to see a nutritional therapist because I needed to sort this out. I couldn't really carry on. It was affecting my business. It was affecting how I functioned as a mother on a day-to-day basis. And she said to me, you need to sort out your intestine. You need to solve the issues that have developed as a result of taking these antibiotics for 25 days. And this is 5 years on. I work with clients on a regular basis who've had antibiotics in their teenage years, and in their 40s, they are struggling with issues that are, they just can't seem to get on top on a day-to-day basis. So I went on an 18-month journey of I was using probiotics every day, twice a day, to colonize the bacteria. I completely cut out alcohol, processed food, anything that basically wasn't going to support my intestine. I didn't consume it, basically. I consumed what felt like, and at the time it wasn't really, fermented foods have become very popular of late. Probiotic foods like kombucha and kimchi and kefir are very popular, so you can find it on the market shelves. It was popular then, as it is now. So I was seeking out fermented foods that I could consume. I was consuming quite a lot of kind of fermented yogurt and stuff like that, natural probiotic yogurt. And I was consuming a lot of prebiotics like garlic, leek, onions, artichokes, anything basically that you would feed the good bacteria in my intestine. My diet has always been good. So I have a lot of fiber in my diet, particularly from green foods. Green carbohydrate, I like to call it, broccoli and kale and spinach and all that kind of thing. And I've always consumed a lot of dark fruits as well. So I had a varied fibrous diet, but I still wasn't able to get my gut bacteria back to where it needed to be without going on this really focused 18 months to 2 years kind of approach to healing my gut bacteria. At the time, before I went on a process of healing my gut bacteria, I was probably having 1, maybe 2 gin and tonics at the weekend. That was it. I wasn't really drinking a huge amount of alcohol. I've never been a big one for kind of slathering myself in skincare products and stuff, so there wasn't a huge impact in that area. So it really was just this antibiotics that I'd taken that was just preventing my gut bacteria from coming back to optimal health. Everything I was doing was trying to bring it back up again, but every time I had a gin and tonic, for example, it would take it back down again. And then I'd spend the week, kind of eating healthily and stuff, as I pretty much did anyway, and it would come back up again, and then I'd do something, or I'd have a bar of chocolate or something, and it would destroy it a little bit more. And I never seemed to get it to the point where it was at optimal health and then able to improve and repair itself effectively. I didn't have any refined sugars foods in my diet, but I did have sugar at that stage before I went on this journey to heal my intestine. I wasn't a big saturated fat consumer. I've always cooked foods from fresh. But I was at the time having some gluten in my diet and some dairy. So I didn't really make the association between how those two food groups or food substances could impact the health of my intestine. So by going on this kind of diet where I was cutting everything out, really focused it on the foods that I was eating protein for breakfast to keep my blood sugars balanced so that I didn't have all this stress going on in my system, I was able to heal my intestine. But it did take a long time. It was a good 18 months to 2 years before I really felt that I could stop taking the probiotic every single day, twice a day. It was a long time before I felt that I could relax and bring some, relax and have a little bit of chocolate, for example, or a gin and tonic if I went out. It was a long time before I got to that point, before I felt that all those symptoms, like my tiredness in the afternoon, like my skin conditions, it was a long time before I felt I'd got on top of those. I did notice improvements, but they were slow and they were gradual. But now we are very, very fortunate to have at our fingertips a 21-day program that will allow for the reset of the intestine. Now, when I first came across this program, I was a bit kind of like, 21 days, how can you heal the intestine in 21 days? I've just gone on an 18 months to 2-year journey of healing my intestine. How can this happen? Well, when the intestine is not actually healing itself effectively, it's not repairing itself and improving on a day-to-day basis, if the nutrients we are consuming are not able to boost the intestinal bacteria effectively enough to mean that they can get back to where they should be, we even though we're cutting things out, even though we're on a very focused diet, if we're not taking on board the right nutrients, the right targeted nutrients to allow for the healing to take place and for everything to come back into balance, that's why it can take so long. So by following a 21-day program that is specifically designed to reset the health of the microbiome and specifically designed to repopulate the gut bacteria and allow everything to come back into balance again, we can actually do that in 21 days because it's so targeted and such important and the right balance of doses of nutrients. It will allow for the microbiome population to come back into balance. Now, this 21-day program is not a faddy program. It is a 21-day program of targeted nutrition, nutrients that come in the form of some supplements, but it also is a targeted program about getting you to eat right for your microbiome. So it's not faddy, there's no meal replacements. It's all about eating proper fresh food and getting back in touch with how to eat long term to nourish your microbiome population, to get everything back into balance again. And some of the results that we get from people going through this 21-day program are absolutely phenomenal. I've got people who have suffered with endometriosis for years and years and years and never been able to get on top of it. And by resetting the health of the microbiome, being able to get rid of all the chemical estrogens in their system, they've been able to clear their endometriosis and they've been able to reboot their life, have more energy again, balance their hormones, get rid of all the irritability. I've got clients that have solved menopause problems, bloating, IBS problems, clients who couldn't leave the house in the morning for the first 2 hours because they were on and off of the toilet. That's how bad their IBS was. They had no idea when that was going to finish at the end each morning. Clients that haven't slept for years and years, 10 years of not sleeping properly, and then all of a sudden they're having a good night's sleep and they're looking forward to going to bed and they're feeling super energized. But more importantly, just breaking the cycle of rubbish eating, getting you refocused again, getting you moving away from sugar, getting rid of the coffee, and allowing for the intestinal bacteria to repair itself and come back into balance. Weight loss is a side effect of this 21-day program, but that's because everything comes back into balance. It's not the reason why you do this program. The reason why you do this program is because your gut health is the core of your health. If you want longevity, if you want good health, if you want to be at the top end of the kind of health continuum where you're achieving, you've got loads of energy on a day-to-day basis, you're glowing, you feel you've got mental clarity, you're on top of your game as far as your business is concerned, how you serve your clients, all that kind of thing. If you're, whatever it is that you feel feel like you're struggling with as far as your health is concerned, if we reset the health of the intestine, we will solve whatever problem it is struggling with on a day-to-day basis. We can get rid of allergies, we can get rid of sinusitis, we can get rid of migraine, we can get rid of blood imbalances and menopause symptoms and hormone imbalances, we can get rid of IBS, you name it. By rebalancing the health of the intestine, you can rebalance your health, you can achieve weight loss, you can achieve elite health, where you do really what we call unlock your potential, basically. So this program is a 21-day program that allows for the reset of the intestine. You cut out the crap for 21 days. So you cut out caffeine, refined sugar, alcohol, and processed food for the 21 days. The reason for this is you need to give your intestinal bacteria a chance to heal itself. And given high doses of targeted nutrition, the bacteria can repopulate very quickly. You eat 3 proper meals a day, so there's no stress on the system from meal replacements or anything like that. It's very focused on 3 meals a day. It's a fully supported program through a Facebook group where we have a video playlist that tells you what to do. There is lots of interaction between everyone that's participating in this program. There is a recipe book and an eating plan that you can follow to make sure that you are kind of inspired on a day-to-day basis. You get the full Synergy Purify program, which is the targeted nutrients that I was talking about. And this next 21-day group starts on Monday, the 17th of June. Here is the Purify kit, 5 I get my words out in a minute. 5 supplements that target the health of the microbiome, allow that microbiome population to repair itself and to flourish. Most importantly, to flourish. And that's crucial, because we could be feeding our microbiome on a day-to-day basis, allowing it to keep at a certain level, but we may not actually be encouraging it to flourish and to be actually exactly where it's needed. So there's a magnesium supplement in there, there's a pre and probiotic in there, there's a cardiovascular support supplement, there is a supplement that with glutamine, which is a very, very important nutrient for healing the gut wall and allowing for the gut bacteria populations to replenish. We clean off the wall of the intestine, get rid of all the rubbish that is compromising the health of the bacteria, and really give that bacterial population a chance to flourish and to repair itself. So you can have a lot of fat stores full of toxins. Those toxins across the gut wall are stored by the body in the fat cells. And whilst those toxins are in the fat cells, so we won't ever burn effectively. We won't ever effectively burn those fat cells. But if we go on a diet, when we haven't cleansed and got rid of those toxins out of the system, those toxins are released into the body. And the body doesn't want that, because those toxins can attack the vital organs. So as soon as we finish this diet plan, whatever it is we might be following, we just put weight back on again. And that's how we get on the yo-yo dieting bandwagon. We put weight back on again because the body doesn't want those toxins circulating in the system. If we cleanse the system right from the very beginning, so if we go on a diet, if we go on a program where we are supporting the microbiome population, so toxins across the gut wall, and we are drawing those toxins out of the fat cells, as soon as we come off that program, we're healthy, and we don't need to store those toxins again in the fat cells. So we don't put the fat weight back on again. So if we can get our system healthy before we go on any kind of, whether it's weight loss or any healing journey, if the body's healthy, if the body's clear of toxins, if the liver's working properly, if the microbiome population is in balance, then anything that we're trying to achieve is completely obtainable. Whether it's weight loss, whether it's improved performance at sport, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're healthy internally, your body will be balanced, your liver will be working properly, your microbiome population will be able to replenish itself, and you won't have any of the symptoms. So you're all on this webinar because you've got something going on with your intestinal system. You want to know how you can get to better health. You want to know how you can balance your hormones, or how you can lose more weight, or how you can not be so tired during the day, or how you can sleep better at night. Everybody's on here. You might be struggling with IBS or acid reflux, whatever it is, you're on here because you want to know how to achieve better health. but better health does begin in the intestine. All disease begins in the intestine. This isn't new stuff. This is Hippocrates 2,500 years ago saying this. We're just catching up with ourselves now in the 21st century. If we heal the intestine, we solve all the problems that we are struggling with on a day-to-day basis, whether that's mental clarity and being able to perform better, whether it's just getting rid of the dragging migraines on a week-to-week basis, or the menopause symptoms, or whether it's getting rid of the acne that you've been struggling with for years. Whatever it is that is causing your health not to be in tip-top condition on a day-to-day basis, it all does begin in the intestine. It's a 21-day program that allows for the reset of the intestine. You cut out the crap, caffeine, refined sugar, alcohol, processed food for 21 days. It's fully supported through a Facebook group, as I said, with a recipe book and an eating plan. You get that full Purify program that I demonstrated to you, the 5 targeted nutrients. And it starts on Monday, the 17th of June. If you want to know how you can be part of that program, if that program sounds like it's the right thing for you to do, go back to the person that introduced you to the webinar and have a conversation with them about how you can access that program. If you don't know who introduced you to the webinar, just email me, sue@suethomas.org, and we can have a conversation and we can look at how we can get you started. If you want to have boundless energy on a day-to-day basis, if you want to sleep better at night, have strong and healthy nails, be rid of hormone imbalances, get rid of headaches, have complete mental clarity so you can be more productive on a day-to-day basis, get rid of bloating and IBS or acid reflux, ease joint pains, just ease anxiety that you might be struggling with on a day-to-day basis as well, and unlock your full potential. You need to feed and nourish the health of your microbiome population in your intestine. So I just want to say thank you very much for listening this evening. I do appreciate your time. I hope you found that useful. If you would like to go back to the person that introduced you to the webinar to find out how you can access the Pure 21 program that starts next Monday, go and have a conversation with them. We do need to get the kits ordered, so if you are thinking about doing it, don't wait too long, otherwise you may not be able to start on the 17th. Thank you so much for listening this evening. I do appreciate your time. I wish you the best of the rest of the evening, and hopefully some of you I will see on the next Pure 21 program that starts on the 17th of June. Thanks again everyone for listening, and I will look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.